Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. Today, we're back to the Conan RPG again with what might be my favorite supplement for that game, which is Conan the Thief. I'm a big fan of thief stories and heist stories and rogue characters, and that's what this entire book is about. So let's dive in and take a look at what it's got in there. Check out the big PDF. Um, so, right up front, let's look at the table of contents so you can see what's in here. There's a whole section of thief characters, and we'll go through each of these one by one. There's a gazetteer that talks about Zamora, Carinthia, Nemedia, and Brithunia, which are kind of the four of the big main countries in the middle of Hyboria. There's an event section, a section talking about myth and magic and how that relates to thievery. Encounters, which is mostly just NPCs and monsters. Hither Came Conan, which we always skip because it's boring. The Way of Thieves, which is how to run thief campaigns and how to deal with thievery and that sort of thing as a game master, which is a really valuable chapter. And then there's Heists. There's an actual thing of how to put together heists. And then, of course, there's always the Heroes of the Age, which we also skip because it's boring. I should explain. Hither Came Conan is a chapter that is about the time in Conan's life when he was a thief, which if you are a big fan of the fiction or you just haven't read it all and you're curious, then I suppose this could be valuable to you. In none of my games does Conan himself actually appear, nor am I concerned with the continuity of the Conan universe. And so, yeah, absolutely nothing valuable to me in that chapter. Heroes of the Age is based on the original Kickstarter that Modifius did for this line of games, where if people pledged at a certain level, then they could create a character and it would be published in a book. I could not care less about that. So, I'm glad that they got a successful Kickstarter. Yay! And, if there are people who want 3 NPCs for some reason, here's 3 NPCs. But you've got a whole chapter of really good NPCs, you don't need this stuff. So, let's go on to the really good stuff, the meat of this. So, we have our thief characters. And the core book has all the character creation options that you really need. But if you want to tailor someone specifically for thievery, in some sense, there's a bunch of new options here. Okay, homelands are not really changed. You can be a thief no matter where you are. But there's a new caste, which is outlaw, and they come with their own stories and their own traits, and that's a nice thing to have. The big main exciting thing here are the archetypes. Sometimes some of the archetypes in these splat books are less exciting than other times. All of these are winners, every one of them. There's the assassin, the bloody right hand, which is like the thug that stands next to the master thief or the gang leader or whoever and kills whoever needs to be killed. Fence, highwayman, the master thief, relic hunter. So it's mostly city thievery, like stealing things from people, but relic hunting, treasure hunting is also a form of thievery, absolutely. And so if you want to do that kind of thing, here you go. Here's your ancient Conan, Indiana Jones. They have the spy, and did I skip it? Nope. Yeah, the spy, which I dig. I dig the spy. So then there's this whole education section, and that's really useful, but this is my favorite thing. So every character has a war story in this game, and it's just a little thing, and you roll on a table, and it's like, you were in a war and this happened, or you were in a war and some other thing happened, and they're all just kind of interesting little flavorful backstory bits. Well, for thieves, they've changed that, so if you want, you can choose to roll on the heist story instead of the war story. So instead of like your unit was all killed and you were left abandoned in the desert, it's things like you robbed a drunk of an expensive piece of jewelry. Or my favorite one, you performed as angry drunk and out of control lover while robbing tavern folk. So these are just little neat things, and then of course you get some skill improvements at the end. But they're there to give flavor to your character, and I think they're really groovy. So hooray for that. Then there's a bunch of talents and stuff. Let's take a look at the Gazetteer. Zamora, of course, is the big main nation on display in this book. Zamora is like all the worst qualities of Babylon, Atlantic City, Las Vegas all combined into one. It's like an evil amusement park for thieves, essentially. The whole country is. This is the city in stories like The Tower of the Elephant, which is one of the very best Conan stories, in my opinion. Um, and so this is the iconic Conan thief setting and location. And this goes into three different cities. You know, here's the nation of Zamora, and then you have Zamora, Shadazar, and Yazud. And there are descriptions of each one of those, including maps and what is in different parts of them. This thing you see in the middle here is actually the Tower of the Elephant, and there's a pretty good description of what that tower is like and what's in it. There's actually NPC descriptions later on for Yara, who owns it, and Yag Kosha, the creature that is imprisoned inside of it. So there's a lot of neat things that you can do. Hooray! Oh, and there it talks about Yara. Then we get to talk about Shadazar, which is home of the Black Hand. We get another really good map for them. The Black Hand is like a thieves guild kind of a thing. Big, huge, kind of international criminal enterprise. And then we have Yazud, which is famous primarily because it is the site of the cult of the spider god. And that's a really cool, exciting new thing that I guess new thing. It's a religion that is entirely focused around secrets and maintaining secrets, stealing secrets, all of that sort of thing. In fact, one of the backgrounds that we skipped over when I was skipping through the character section is literally called Spider, which doesn't mean that you are physically a spider, but that you are like an information broker, someone who sits in the middle of a web of informants, collecting information and then distributing it out. It's a really neat little detail thrown in there, and the Cult of the Spider God actually gets a lot of description throughout this book in a couple of different sections. So hooray for that. Corinthia. If you're not familiar with the geography of Hyboria and the Conan stories, Corinthia is kind of sort of like ancient Greece after everyone had caught up with it, so it wasn't special anymore, but before it had faded away and was still really important. It's a very ancient society. They have, really elevated levels of culture and academics and all of that sort of thing. It isn't necessarily a thief-centric place, but it is a well-developed place with a lot of rich people, which makes it valuable for thieves. Plus, it's in the middle of the thing. And so, again, good maps and descriptions of the cities. We talk about all this other stuff. One interesting thing, the House of Nabonidus. There's a really great Conan story called Rogues in the House, which is kind of like the Conan version of H.H. Holmes and the Devil in the White City. The idea that there is a building, a home, a giant palace that is essentially a machine designed to catch and kill people who come inside of it. And so if you want your thief characters to tangle with that house or a house like it, you've got the option right here in Corinthia. So hooray for that. Let's take a look, skip ahead to Nemedia. Nemedia, if we're drawing real-world parallels, Nemedia is kind of like a medieval Germany. We're so accustomed to seeing pictures of Conan the Barbarian wearing like the fur loincloth and stuff. And so we forget that canonically the stories include full plate mail. Look at this picture. This is like late medieval, half-timbered architecture. If you want that kind of stuff in your Conan game, Nemedia is a great place to find it. Brithunia, Corinthia have similar levels of technology and advancement. So even though the stories ostensibly take place so long ago that their history's been completely lost, um, they had plate mail and half-timbered houses and all this kind of stuff. And so, again, like Corinthia, Numidia is valuable primarily because it's a place where you can steal stuff from people in a recognizable setting. Brithunia is essentially the same way. Brithunia, I would say, is more Polish or even British than German. Not that there is a meaningful distinction there in role-playing game terms, but what's really neat about this Brithunia chapter is the village designer. And this is useful primarily for Brithunia, but I think you could apply it to these other kingdoms as well. And so as you're traveling along, there's little charts where you say you roll dice to see how many roads does this have. And then based on how many roads, you know how big it is, and so you know how many buildings to populate it with. And then you can just kind of roll on this settlement chart and say, well, there's this building, and it has this kind of person there, and they're good or they're bad, or whatever it is. There's a unique trait to it, however you want to generate it. It's a really neat little thing, and I love these kind of generators. I'm not going to go through and build a village right now for you to see what it is, because I am going to use one of the generators at the end when we get to the heist thing. So anyway, this village generator is kind of cool, and I dig it. So let's talk about events. The events section in this book is basically just a chapter full of story seeds. That's all it really is. So there's personal events. What kind of events can take place that are related to your characters specifically? So they have rivalries, or they want revenge, or they've been targeted for murder, things like that. Then there are city and town events. What sort of things will happen that are based on the location that you're in the city or the town? What about the kingdom itself? If there's a war going on, how does that affect the thieves? If someone kidnaps the prince, how does that affect the thieves? Things like that. And then unnatural events. If you want to bring in those cultists or some magic or some evil sorcerers or demons or something like that, there you go. So that section is kind of fun. The myth and magic section is similar in that it is mostly just adventure ideas. And it talks primarily about Bel, the god of thieves, and then, of course, the cult of the spider god. And we get a lot of really good information about them. And it's all neat stuff. We'll talk a little bit about necromancers. The encounter section in these Conan books is always phenomenal because it's several pages long and there's just so much. You want an assassin? Stat block for an assassin, for a back alley killer, for a guild thief, for an inquisitor, for a merchant. And I'm not going to name every single one as we go through because I want to get to this section that has a lot of named people. So we have all the generic ones, like this is a watchman on this road or a street thug. But then also whoever this is, and then a lot of these people that we recognize from the stories. Many Eyes, the spy master of Yazud, he's one of those spider kind of informant characters, like I was saying. We have Nabonidus, the red priest from Rogues in the House. We've got, who am I looking for? Shivatas, who's from the Black Colossus. Taurus of Numidia, who's the thief Conan works with in Tower of the Elephant. And then Yara. And then we get into fearsome creatures, so there's, rats and giant skeletons, spider horrors. And then we have Yag Kosha. I promised we had stats for him. Big description. And, these also include doom spends in most cases, so that you know how to use the Modifius 2d20 meta currency system. You've got all this doom that you're generating as your characters do things. How can you as the GM use that doom to do awful stuff to your characters? Well, there's descriptions of it all over the place, which is great. So then hither came Conan, if you really want to know what Conan's doing with his life, and for some reason want to include him in your game. Here's his stats. The Way of Thieves, this is a little more interesting in that it is, like I said, instructions or guidance on how to build a thief campaign. So what do you do? What kind of things are important? How is weather going to affect you? If you want to join a thieves guild, how does that work? How does the reputation work? And then here's a bunch of actual thieves guilds and things like that. So hooray for all of that. Now let's talk about heists. And this is the last chapter, basically, of the book. And it is a neat way of planning out a heist adventure. Okay? So, it's a little table that you roll on. They start with who. I'm going to skip who, and I'm going to move ahead to what. Okay? What is it that we are stealing? Roll a d20. I got a 2. We are stealing. Now, is this going to be mundane or rare? Commodities or important documents? Okay, these are important documents, and then let's give ourselves a description as well. 5. Decorated. These important documents have been decorated. What does that mean? I wonder if it says. It doesn't say. Okay, so where are these important documents being held? Let's roll and find out. Is this urban? We're going to say that we're urban. There's a whole rural table, but we're going to go under the city. Someone is storing important documents under the city. That implies it's like a crypt or a secret tunnel. What kind of documents would be stored in a crypt or an underground temple or something like that? I don't know. It's exciting to find out what's going on. Now we can go back to that who table and say, well, there's a lot of different things we can use this for. This could be the person we're stealing it from. This could be our contact. We can just roll a couple of times and populate it. So I got a 3. That's a laborer who is 5. Enigmatic. So a laborer of some kind maybe is working on a project excavating an ancient ruin that the city was built on top of. And there's actually several cities in this book that talk about how they were built on top of ruins. So we've got a lot of that to work with. Shadazar, I know in particular, has a ruin underneath it. So maybe we can set this in Shadazar. And characters are hanging out, they're carousing, they're doing whatever. And then a day laborer, some kind of construction worker, starts telling a story in a bar about the weird project that he's working on, trying to, clear out some stuff or reinforce old tunnels, and saw something, some really important people who were talking about really important documents. At this point, we would want to figure out what those important documents are. Let's roll another profession. 9. A tradesman. We got a trade. How many tradesmen do we need? And then a 20. A zealous tradesman. What is that? I don't know if that is super helpful. Similar to a merchant, but a tradesman is responsible for an industry or large organized group. It's the head of the brewer's guild. Okay, so this laborer's boss was talking to, I want something in the back half of, there we go, 16. A master thief. I'm going to switch that to a temple antiquarian. Okay? This temple antiquarian is the one who hired the tradesman and his laborers to do this job. And he was talking, and got another 16. A suspicious. He was saying suspicious things about some documents. So this is an ancient temple that perhaps has an old burial site of ancient kings who used to live here. And the documents could prove something valuable about the actual heir to the kingdom. Maybe the current line that is in charge of this kingdom or this city, it shouldn't be, because these documents have been found, and so they're of incredible political importance. And so the characters are going to go in and do that. And now we get to the really fun table. Now that we know kind of what this is about, we have the wrinkles and the hitches. Wrinkles are things you know about in advance, and hitches are things that you don't. And so let's roll really quick. We've got 15. It's in transit. The documents have already been taken out of that temple or are being moved out of the temple to somewhere else. Let's get another wrinkle. 12. Sorcery is involved. We know that this temple antiquarian is protecting those documents with sorcery. So you let your characters plan. You let your players think, well, okay, how are we going to do this? Are we going to try to get this stuff before they move it out of the temple, or are we going to wait till they get it out and hit them while they're in the streets? They make their plan, right? This is a heist. But we secretly are also rolling hitches. So let's give them 2 hitches. They don't know that 6, it's in public, meaning everyone is going to see. So they're not moving this in the middle of the night. They're moving it during the day. That's going to throw a wrinkle into their plans. We also got 15 beasts. They don't understand. The characters don't know that maybe some of the guards are going to be beasts. Maybe the documents are being stored in a cage full of snakes. Or maybe it's just that there's some hounds of some kind, some really vicious dogs that are protecting it. However you want to interpret beasts and throw that in there. So, with just a handful of rolls, we've come up with this cool adventure that has good ideas and neat things for the characters to do, and then some hitches to throw at them partway through to make them modify their plans on the fly. Anyway, I love heists. It's like my favorite genre of movie. Anyway, that is the book, Conan the Thief. So, I really dig this. Like I said, I think it is one of the best stories that Conan does. Tower of the Elephant, and also one of the best source books in this line. So anyway, check out Conan the Thief. I don't usually say this, but I'm going to say this. If you like these reviews, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other games you would love for me to cover. I have my whole rest of the year scheduled out through the end of December, but I'm always looking for new games, and a lot of 2021 is still wide open. So if there's a particular thing you would love for me to talk about, let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Dan Wells, and you are awesome.